RTT desktop test set that is connected to terminal blocks 5, 7, and 9 for this training. And then those points will be mapped via B003 back to the Win database automatically once we configure the B003 application. So that's the second step, is to configure the B003 application after enabling the applications. And then we're going to map these points into the binary input map table in Modbus. These points will be mapped in as point 1, 2, and 3. Digital input 1, digital input 2, digital input 3. Then we have to put these points inside a status set. So we have to configure the status set table, add the status set. We're going to add it with address 10,000. We're going to map in these 3 points to that status set. And then we're going to add a logical remote unit address of 10 to the status set. So the status set will be part of the logical remote unit of address 10, which is configured in the LRU table. So when the master sends a poll, it needs a communication port specific to that poll. And in order to connect the logical remote unit to that communication port, we need to configure the cross-reference table to the logical remote unit. And finally, we'll configure the port in order for the RTU to respond via that port. In this case, in the port configuration table, we're going to configure COM number 3 connected to the LRU address 10, which is connected to status set 10,000, under which there is 3 points, 1, 2, and 3. For this lab, we're going to create a project that we named D20-1071 Modbus. In this project, we're going to add a D20MX device that's compatible with our version number of the D20MX from the navigator, and we're going to name it Modbus DPA D20MX. As per the overview, we're going to enable 4 applications. In this case, the applications will be B003, A068, B008, and B014. And now we can start our configuration. So we start with the peripheral link application, or B003. And in the B003 application, we enable the C1 board, which is the only board that we have in this lab. Of course, if you have other boards, it will be displayed in here. We double click on the C1 board. Okay, and we can see that our type of board is a C1. We go to the IO configuration and we tag point number 5 as point 1, point number 7 as point 2, and point number 9 as point 3. So now our tagging is done. These points are also converted to the Win database automatically. Our job in B003 is done. Now we open our Modbus DPA application. So you can see the Modbus DPA is straightforward. You just put the points in the map table, put a status set, give it an address of 10,001, and then map it into the logical remote unit table, and then put an RTU address for the logical remote unit in the cross-reference table. Finally, connect that RTU to the COM port. In this case, it's going to be COM number 3. Okay, so let's start. We open the digital input table. In the digital input table, we select our points. So we need point number 5 as the first point. Notice the point reference is in the gray area. So point number 5 inside Modbus is going to be point number 1. So whatever the SRU address, so let's say the SRU address is 10,001, that will be point number 1. 10,002 will be point number 2 based on the status set address. So if we go to the status set next table, in the status set we're going to select a status input. Now by selecting a status input, what you're saying is that you will accept function number 2, and the starting address is 10,001, which is a common starting address for a status set point under Modbus. And then we select the number of points. We make sure that these 3 points are mapped into our status set 10,001. Next, we go to the LRU configuration table, where we configure the first status set, which is the status set that we just created in here. We map it to this logical remote unit number 1. Now we need to give the logical remote unit number 1 an address. In this case, we decided to give it address number 1, address number 10. So we go to the LRU cross-reference, and we map in the LRU address 1 to LRU address 10. So LRU number 1 will be mapped to LRU address 10. Finally, we need to connect the LRU address 10 to the port configuration table, which is COM number 3, 9600 baud rate. And because I'm not using a modem, I go under the modem used and I select no modem. And under the first LRU, I select my LRU number 10, which is mapped with 1 SRU, and that SRU has an address of 10,000. We've got 3 points.